Steve Gamache here with another Chef Knives to Go quick look product review, and what we're looking at here is the Nishida Shidogami or white number 1 polished Funayuki 150mm knife. These are pretty highly polished, so I'll try to keep the reflections down to a minimum. The heat treat on that core steel, which is, let's back up a little bit, the core steel is Shidogami or white paper number 1 reactive carbon steel from Hitachi, which is a very pure steel, which takes a fantastic edge. It's very, very easy to sharpen. The heat treat's about 61, 60-ish Rockwell on that. They do these by hand, so that's their target. The construction is a soft iron cladding on both sides of that core steel for a 3-layer sandwich. You can definitely see the core steel peeking through at the edge there, and they've polished these up quite a bit, so they've got almost a mirror, close to a mirror polish on them, and really nice polish. The finish, actually, I found pretty durable on these despite the polish, which sometimes can show stuff so fast, but seem to be reasonably durable finish on these. So there is no stainless on these, so these can be quite reactive. The cladding sometimes is more reactive than the core steel, so you'll need to pay attention to these and make sure you keep them dry, wipe them down. You might even want to put a preliminary patina on them. There's a variety of techniques to do that before you start really putting it to use to keep the reactivity down, unless you want to keep them polished. That's really up to you. Let's look at the statistics. So the weight on this is about 100 grams or 3.5 ounces. These are going to vary a little bit from knife to knife because they're handmade. This one's right about 150 on the edge, or about 5.9 inches. Overall length, right about 11 inches on this one. And the spine thickness coming out of the handle is about 3.25 millimeters, and this is going to vary. But then it just kind of starts thinning down a little bit from that, thinning down and thinning down. And then these have a nice thin tip on them, so they've ground quite thin at the very, very tip for performance. Blade height is about 40.4 millimeters on this one. Handle type is, we'll take a close-up look at it, but it's a nicely done oval, ambidextrous, rosewood with a black packawood stabilized wood ferrule. This one's a little smaller, 64 millimeters on circumference, where the ferrule meets the main part of the handle, and that's about 2.5 inches, but it fits the size and shape of the knife pretty well. These have a good generous neck, and that'll vary a little bit from knife to knife. This particular one's got a generous neck if you want to use it in a pinch grip. It fits really nicely for that. The balance point is just a little bit behind the pinch grip, so it's probably about right there, feels like where the balance point is. So you could use this in a variety of grips and get a neutral balance point out of it. Let's take a close-up look at it. I'll flip it over here to show you. We do have some kanji on there. I think it's hand chiseled, but it could be a machine that somebody's used by hand. I don't have an answer for you on that, but it's definitely done by hand, either with a chisel or with some kind of machine, but it almost looks hand chiseled. It's just kind of small. So I'm going to guess it's hand chiseled. You can feel it when you run your finger over it. So you've got a fair amount of polish to it, but as I said, the finish is actually rather durable on these, or it seemed to be. These are ground pretty thin at the edge. You can kind of tell by how the grind is and how much core steel you have showing. So they grind these things pretty thin at the edge. And the tip is pretty thin on these, so they're kind of stiff blades, and they've got a little meat on the spine, especially towards the handle, but they perform pretty doggone well, better than you might think they would. So that geometry really helps to do that. Great fit and finish in general, just on the polish and the spine and the choil, so they're ready to roll out of the box. Edges, I'll give it a 5 out of 10. You can get this a lot sharper if you are a reasonably good sharpener, so I would encourage you to do that. That's part of the reason people buy Shidogami number 1 is they like to sharpen and they want really sharp edges. So let's look at it on our cutting board. This is a cool, just utility knife. It's neat. It's taller than your average kind of short petty, so this would make a kind of a mini Gyuto style, and fairly low belly profile. The tip is fairly low in the terms of the overall knife line, so you've got a fairly low profile overall, which is good for a variety of techniques. And then I can get about right there before I start digging the tip in. Every knife's going to be a little bit different, but I can do plenty of rocking with this, or a variety of techniques. So it's a pretty versatile little knife. So if you're up for something that is fully reactive, cladding and core, but you want a easy to sharpen knife, this has a fairly flat profile. This would be great if you want to practice sharpening, it'd be an awesome knife for that. And it's not a cheapy or anything like that. It's a nicely made blade and really good performance. So think about that if you're into getting something to practice sharpening on. This would be an awesome knife for something like that. So here you have the Nishida Shidogami #1 polished Funayuki 150mm knife.